I always thought the worst thing that could happen on my wedding day would be a torn dress or a missing ring. I was wrong. The real disaster didn't happen at the altar. It happened when I checked my phone and realized my parents weren't coming at all. Instead, they were at a surprise birthday party my sister had planned for her boyfriend. On the exact same day. The same hour I was supposed to say I do. My mother's text was painfully short. Your father will be there. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. As if choosing a party over my wedding was some small inconvenience I should quietly accept. I walked down the aisle that day with a smile frozen on my face and a hollow ache in my chest, telling myself I didn't need them. But weeks later, everything changed. When my aunt and uncle decided to leave their entire inheritance to me, my parents suddenly remembered I existed. Now they want me to fix everything by having another wedding. And for the first time in my life, I'm wondering if losing them was the price of finally choosing myself. I was 6 years old the first time I realized that the people I called mom and dad didn't really feel like mine. By then, my world already belonged to Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert, the people who had raised me since I was born. My parents like to explain it gently, as if that makes it better. They say they were young, overwhelmed, and struggling financially. They say my mother had severe postpartum depression and couldn't cope. So they temporarily asked my aunt and uncle to take me in. Temporary turned into 6 years. To me, Linda was the one who brushed my hair every morning and hummed while she did it. Robert was the one who held my bike steady until I learned to ride without falling. Their house smelled like coffee in the mornings and warm laundry in the evenings. I felt safe there. I felt wanted. I didn't even know they weren't my real parents at first. Then my parents started visiting. They would show up every few weeks, smiling too brightly, bringing small gifts. They told me stories about how I would come home soon. They played with me for a few hours, asked me questions, took pictures, then they left. And every time they left, they took my baby sister, Lauren, with them. I remember standing by the window, watching their car disappear down the street, holding a stuffed bear Linda had sewn for me. I didn't understand why they never took me with them. I didn't understand why Lauren always went home and I stayed behind. When I was finally old enough to ask, my mother knelt in front of me and said, "You're just staying with your aunt and uncle for a little while longer. They're helping us." Helping. Like I was a burden being passed around. When I turned 6, they decided it was time for me to come home. Everyone acted like it was a happy reunion. Linda cried when she packed my clothes. Robert hugged me for a long time and told me I could always call them. I was excited at first. I thought this meant I finally belonged. That illusion shattered quickly. The house felt colder, louder, less forgiving. Lauren already had her own room, but instead of giving me the empty guest room, my parents decided we should share. "So you can bond," my mother said. Lauren hated me from the moment I walked in. And as I would soon learn, no matter how hard I tried to be good, quiet, or grateful, I would never be the child they chose first. Sharing a room with Lauren wasn't bonding. It was a daily reminder that I was an intruder in a life that already belonged to her. She made that clear from the beginning. The first night I unpacked my things, she watched from her bed with her arms crossed, eyes sharp and calculating. When I placed my books neatly on my side of the shelf, she snorted. "Why do you even read that much? You're so weird." I laughed nervously, hoping it was just nerves. I was wrong. Every small thing I did seemed to irritate her. If I talked too loudly, she'd complain. If I laughed, she'd mimic me in a high-pitched voice until my cheeks burned with embarrassment. When I practiced the guitar Uncle Robert had given me, she would yell, "You sound horrible. Just stop." So I stopped. At school, I did well. I loved learning, loved the feeling of getting something right. One afternoon, I came home excited, clutching a paper with a bright red A at the top. I showed it to my parents, my heart pounding. Lauren rolled her eyes before they even spoke. "Of course you did. Teacher's pet." My mother smiled distractedly and said, "That's nice, Emily," before turning back to Lauren to ask about her day. That was the pattern. Always. When Lauren mocked my clothes, my mom said, "She's just joking." When she called me ugly during my awkward preteen years, my mom said, "Don't be so sensitive." When I cried, my dad sighed and told me I needed thicker skin. Once, after Lauren tore down a drawing I'd taped to the wall, I snapped and yelled at her. She burst into tears instantly. Within minutes, my parents stormed into the room. "What is wrong with you?" my mother demanded, glaring at me. "She started it," I whispered, my voice shaking. Lauren sobbed louder. My father rubbed her back while my mother pointed at me and said, "You're older. You should know better." I learned then that age didn't come with authority, it came with blame. Slowly, I began erasing myself. I stopped bringing things home that mattered to me. I hid my books in my backpack and read them on the bus. I quit guitar lessons entirely. I spoke less, laughed quieter, tried to take up as little space as possible. I believed for a long time that if I became easier, quieter, simpler, smaller, they might finally love me the way they loved Lauren. But the more I disappeared, the more obvious it became. I wasn't failing to fit in. I was never meant to. By the time I reached high school, I had learned how to survive in my family without causing trouble. I didn't ask for much. I didn't complain. I didn't expect praise. Still, a small, foolish part of me believed that if I ever did something truly significant, my parents might finally show up for me. Graduation felt like that moment. I worked relentlessly through those 4 years. Honors classes, late night studying, weekends spent tutoring classmates instead of going out. When I found out I was graduating with honors, I told my parents at dinner, my hands trembling slightly as I spoke. My father smiled and said, "That's great, Emily." My mother nodded. "Good for you." Lauren barely looked up from her phone. A few days before the ceremony, my mother pulled me aside. Her tone was calm, almost apologetic. "Lauren has a dance recital rehearsal on the same day as your graduation," she said. "It's very important. She's nervous." I frowned. "But the times don't overlap. You can come to both." She sighed like I was being unreasonable. "She needs me there the whole time." My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. "Okay, Dad will be there, right?" She hesitated, just long enough for hope to flicker. "Yes," she said. "Of course." On graduation day, I scanned the crowd from the stage, clutching my cap, my heart pounding. I searched row after row for a familiar face. There was none. When my name was called and I walked across the stage, the applause blurred into a dull roar. Everyone else seemed to have someone cheering, waving, crying with pride. I had no one. Later, I learned the truth. Lauren had panicked before rehearsal. My mother called my father, and he rushed to her side without hesitation. They didn't call me. They didn't text. They didn't apologize. When I got home, the house was empty. Hours later, they returned laughing, still riding the high of Lauren's successful rehearsal. They hugged her, praised her, ordered takeout to celebrate. No one mentioned my graduation. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, something inside me went quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply stopped believing they would ever choose me. And once that belief was gone, everything about my relationship with them began to change. After graduation, I stopped sharing my victories with my parents. Not because I had nothing to be proud of, but because I was tired of watching those moments fall flat in front of people who never really saw me. College became my escape. I threw myself into my studies, choosing computer science because it made sense to me. I liked logic. I liked problems that had answers. Unlike my family, code responded to effort. If something didn't work, it wasn't personal. You fixed it and it worked. Lauren, meanwhile, thrived in ways my parents understood better. When she graduated high school and got accepted into a well-known university, my parents threw her a massive celebration. Balloons, banners, relatives flying in from out of state. My mother couldn't stop smiling. "She's going to do amazing things," Susan said proudly, raising a glass. Everyone clapped. Lauren soaked it in like sunlight. I clapped too. I meant it. A year later, I graduated college with honors, a degree in computer science, and a job offer from a top tech company. I told my parents over dinner, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. That's nice, my mother said after a pause. So you'll be busy, I guess. That was it. No party. No dinner. No phone calls to relatives. Nothing. When Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert found out, they were furious, not with me, but with my parents. They insisted on throwing a small gathering to celebrate my achievement. Just close family and a few friends, they said. Word spread. More people wanted to come. This small gathering grew into something bigger. And suddenly, my parents had a problem with it. This feels excessive, my mother said sharply. We didn't do anything like this for Lauren when she started college. You threw her a party with 50 people. That was different, she snapped. She needed encouragement. Needed. Linda didn't hold back. Emily needed encouragement her entire life, she said, her voice trembling with anger. And you weren't there. My uncle nodded. You celebrate one child and ignore the other. Then you act surprised when someone else steps in. My parents argued. They made excuses. They said parenting was hard. They said they did their best. They said love didn't have to be shown equally to be real. But for the first time, their words didn't shrink me. The party happened. People congratulated me. They hugged me. They told me they were proud. And standing there, surrounded by warmth that didn't feel conditional, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. My parents weren't incapable of celebrating me. They had simply chosen not to. And that realization prepared me for the next chapter of my life, one that would challenge their control in ways they never saw coming. I met Jake when I wasn't looking for anything serious. After years of learning not to need approval, I told myself I was done proving my worth to my parents, to anyone. Jake slipped into my life quietly, without grand gestures or promises he couldn't keep. He listened. He noticed things. He treated me like my thoughts mattered. That alone felt revolutionary. Jake was a software engineer, driven, thoughtful, and calm in a way that made chaos feel smaller. When I introduced him to my parents, I hoped, naively, that they might finally see what I saw. Instead, I watched my mother's smile stiffen the moment he spoke. At dinner, she tested him the way she always tested people she wanted to dominate. So, she said, swirling her wine, don't you think careers like yours make people emotionally unavailable? Jake didn't flinch. I think emotional availability is a choice, he replied politely, not a job title. The table went silent. After that, nothing he did was right. He was too opinionated, too career-focused, not family-oriented enough. Meanwhile, Lauren's boyfriend, who had dropped out of college and couldn't hold a steady job, was praised endlessly for being easygoing and respectful. I knew what the real problem was. Jake didn't submit. He didn't nod along when my mother criticized me. He didn't laugh when she made backhanded comments. When she tried to speak over him, he waited and then finished his sentence anyway. Always calm. Always firm. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, my mother pulled me aside. He challenges me, she said sharply. I don't like his influence on you. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. He's not influencing me, Mom. He's just not afraid of you. Her face hardened. You're changing. Yes, I said quietly. I am. That was the moment I understood it wasn't Jake she feared. It was what I became around him, someone who didn't shrink, didn't apologize for existing, didn't bend herself into a shape that made others comfortable. When Jake proposed 6 months later, I said yes, without hesitation. My father congratulated me, his voice warm but distant. My mother said nothing, until later that night, when she texted me a long message about disappointment, intuition, and how she just knew Jake wasn't right for our family. I stared at my phone, then set it down. For the first time in my life, I chose love over approval. And unknowingly, that choice set off the final chain of events, the one that would end with my wedding day, an empty seat where my mother should have been, and a truth she could no longer outrun. The morning of my wedding arrived quietly, almost deceptively calm. Sunlight spilled through the hotel curtains as my bridesmaids laughed around me, adjusting my dress, fixing my hair, telling me how beautiful everything was. I smiled when they looked at me, but inside, something felt unsettled, like I was waiting for a storm I couldn't see yet. My phone buzzed on the vanity. It was my dad. "Your mom won't be coming," the message read. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. I called him immediately. "What do you mean she's not coming?" I asked, my voice already shaking.
He sighed.
"Lauren planned a surprise birthday party for her boyfriend today. Your mom thinks it's really important she's there." I laughed once. A hollow, disbelieving sound. "Dad's birthday isn't even today." "I know," he said quietly, "but the venue is only available now." Something inside me snapped. "So she chose a party," I said slowly, "over my wedding." "Emily," he replied, weary, "I'll be there." That should be enough, right? Enough. I hung up before he could hear me cry. I called Lauren next. She picked up on the third ring, cheerful and distracted, music blaring in the background. "Is this true?" I asked. "You planned a party today, on my wedding day?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Why?" My hands were trembling now. "You could have chosen any other day." She scoffed. "You're already married, basically. This party means a lot to him." "And my wedding doesn't mean anything to you?" I whispered. "My boyfriend comes first," she said flatly. "You should understand that." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there in my wedding dress, staring at my reflection, mascara blurring as tears finally spilled over. Every moment from my childhood rushed back. The missed milestones, the silence, the excuses. This wasn't new. It was just louder.
My phone buzzed again.
This time it was my mother. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she texted. "Your father will be there. Stop being selfish." Selfish. I called her immediately. "If you walk into that party," I said, my voice breaking but steady, "don't call yourself my mother anymore." She laughed, actually laughed. "You're being dramatic. It's just one day." "One day," I shouted. "It's my wedding day. And you're choosing him over me." "I raised you," she snapped. "I deserve respect." "No," I said quietly. "You abandoned me. And you've been choosing Lauren ever since." She hung up. I stood there, shaking, as my bridesmaids rushed in alarmed. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and told myself I would not let them ruin this moment. I walked down the aisle anyway. I said my vows. I married the man who had never once made me feel second best. But the empty seat in the front row burned like a wound. After the ceremony, photos from the party began appearing online. My mother laughing, drinking, dancing. Lauren smiling beside her boyfriend as if nothing else in the world mattered. That was the moment Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert stopped being polite. They confronted my parents that night. No soft words, no excuses allowed. They told my mother exactly what she was, a woman who had failed one daughter while worshiping another. They told her they were ashamed. And then came the words that changed everything. "We're leaving everything to Emily," my uncle said. Every cent. Suddenly, my mother remembered how to cry. She called me the next morning, sobbing, apologizing, saying she didn't mean it, saying we could fix this. She suggested another wedding. A smaller one. A real one. One she could attend. But I knew the truth now. They didn't regret missing my wedding. They regretted missing the money. And standing there beside my husband, phone buzzing endlessly with messages, I no longer had the energy to answer. I realized something profound. This wasn't the day I lost my family. It was the day I finally stopped begging them to choose me. The call started the day after my wedding. At first, I didn't answer. Jake and I were supposed to be celebrating, decompressing, easing into the first quiet moments of being married. But my phone kept vibrating on the nightstand like it had a pulse of its own. Missed calls, voicemails, long texts that swung wildly between guilt, anger, and forced affection. It was my mother. When I finally listened to one of the voicemails, her voice was thick with tears. "Emily, please call me. This has all gone too far. Your aunt and uncle are being unreasonable, and we need to talk like adults." Like adults. She didn't mention my wedding. Not once. She didn't say she was sorry for missing it. What she talked about, over and over, was how unfair the situation was. When I did call her back, she jumped straight to the point. "They can't do this," she said breathlessly. "That inheritance was supposed to help the whole family. They're punishing me because of one misunderstanding." "One misunderstanding?" I repeated. "You chose a party over my wedding." She exhaled sharply. "I told you that wasn't about choosing. You're twisting things." "No," I said calmly. "I'm finally seeing them clearly." Her tone shifted then, softer, almost pleading. "We can fix this.
If you talk to them,
If you tell them you don't want the money, they'll listen to you." There it was. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "So, this is about the inheritance." She didn't deny it. "That money matters," she said. "You don't understand how much." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "You care more about it than you ever cared about me." She cried harder after that, accusing me of tearing the family apart, of being ungrateful, of letting Jake turn me against her. When that didn't work, she tried something else. She suggested we redo the wedding. "A small ceremony," she said eagerly. "Just family. I'll be there this time. We'll make it right." I closed my eyes. "You don't want another wedding for me," I said. "You want one for yourself. So you can tell people you were there." Silence. Then Lauren texted me. She accused me of involving Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert in private family matters. She said Mom was terrified of losing her inheritance and that I should be the bigger person. That for the sake of peace, I should just agree to another wedding and make everything normal again. Normal. I realized then how deep the pattern ran. Even now, even after everything, they wanted me to shrink, to smooth things over, to sacrifice my own feelings so the family could look intact from the outside. Jake watched me quietly as I set my phone down. "You don't owe them anything," he said gently. And for the first time, I believed him. I sent one final message to my mother. "I'm not having another wedding. I'm open to talking someday, but not about money, and not on your terms." After that, I stopped answering. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, but it was honest. And somewhere beneath the weight of it, I felt something new beginning to take shape. Not guilt, not fear, but relief. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way my life had never been before.
no arguments, no explanations.
No desperate attempts to prove I was worthy of being loved. Just space, raw, uncomfortable, but finally mine. Jake and I went on our honeymoon without telling anyone the details. For the first time, I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes, bracing myself for another message that would twist my stomach into knots. I let myself be present. I let myself be happy, without guilt. When we came back, I didn't rush to fix anything. My mother continued to reach out sporadically, apologies mixed with justifications, regret tangled with self-pity. Sometimes she sounded sincere. Sometimes she sounded afraid. But I'd learned the difference between remorse and panic, and I refused to confuse the two again. Lauren reached out once as well. Her message was shorter, less defensive. She didn't excuse what she did, but she didn't fully own it either. I understood then that healing didn't mean instant reconciliation. It meant honesty, even when it was incomplete. I spoke to Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert privately. I told them I never asked for their inheritance and that whatever they decided was their choice alone. They smiled at me the way they always had. "This was never about money," Linda said gently. "It was about standing up for you when no one else did." That night, lying beside my husband, I finally let myself grieve, not just for the wedding my mother missed, but for the childhood I never truly had. I cried for the little girl who kept shrinking, hoping one day she'd be enough. And then I let her go. I don't know what the future holds for my family. Maybe there will be real change. Maybe there won't. What I do know is this. I no longer chase love that comes with conditions. I no longer rewrite my pain to make others comfortable. And I will never again beg to be chosen. Because this time I chose myself.